Good afternoon, everyone. Through antiquity, many ancient cultures focused on the Orion Nebula as the actual seed point for our world. The ancients knew something, how integral the Birkeland currents originating from the Orion Nebula powering our star externally were to the survival of our species. It's been encoded through the Kabbalah and through Hermeticism, as above, so below. It's been encoded since the Sumerian times. It goes back to the Key of Solomon. The Birkeland currents were known as the power source for our star. And these currents, whether bulged or pinched, determined how our societies would thrive. It was so important and so encoded that they left us many messages across the time. And as we go into the new solar minimum, the hidden encoded message that they were trying to tell us, or should I say warn us. From the very earliest of the cultures on our planet, there's been a fascination with Orion. Notice the shape, what we would consider a boat. It's referred to in the primordial Egyptian creation myths as the bark. That shape is even in the close-ups of the Orion Nebula. And when we step back into the Sumerian tree of life, we start to see some of the same shapes indicated. Close up here, showing what appears to be rays and beams of some sort of plasma or electricity coming out of the tree of life. The Egyptian creation myth of Nun. The center scarab beetle is our sun. The orange orb above the sun is reference to Orion powering our sun. And if you take it to a literal sense, the scarab beetle in that fashion would be something like a Z pinch, a zeta pinch, represented through a sacred object in Egyptian culture at the time. When we do take a look into Orion, the nebula further, Danny Wilton theorized that disguising this type of information through the 500 years of the Catholic Inquisitions, when you see the cloud in these 15th, 14th, and 16th century paintings, they're referring to Orion. In the Hermetic schools, as above, so below, and in some of their earliest renditions, this is a colorized version of the black and white lithograph. You can easily see a larger center, what would be Orion powering externally a sun in either our own solar system or another solar system. A Birkeland current in 600-year-old lithographs. You'll see Birkeland currents in every single nebula and galaxy across the entire universe. There's always opposite rotational forces that make that twist come out. Now with Wilton's observations in cathedrals and different murals painted through the ages, the representation of God is the Orion Nebula, which these Birkeland currents stem from that power our star. It's been encoded in the tree of life in the Kabbalah, the Kundalini, the rising serpent powering down from Orion to our own star. Kether is Orion, and the Kundalini, the serpent, that is the Birkeland current. A wide view of our galactic center here. And inside the Orion Nebula, something that very similarly mimics not only the Assyrian but the Sumerian depictions of the Tree of Life. This is a view of Orion in infrared. You can easily see the filament currents coming out of there. The ones that are powering our sun originate from this nebula. Spitzer Space Telescope also gives you a nice view of different filaments, the Birkeland currents, from Zeta Ophiuchus. This Orion Nebula is something special. It has been recorded since antiquity. The Sumerian Birkeland current representation, if you don't see it, it is so plain in front of your face that something greater is sending current down, and it's using the same tree of life through the Kabbalah. That is our center star, as well as our Earth and ourselves. The Cygnus Loop Nebula is nothing more than one giant plasma current, one giant Birkeland current through space. And you ask, well, how might these connect and what does that really mean for us? But if you take a full, wide, universal view, it looks like the neural net of our brain. This is the universe connected through plasma filaments. The electric universe is proven by simply this shot alone. This is the connectivity of galaxy to galaxy, nebula to nebula through currents in space. A little bit closer view in there to see the star clusters. Those that actually be galactic clusters. But notice how you can actually see the stars form along those current lines. And the representations over the last 500 years in these different type of lithographs absolutely showed that there is an outside force responsible for our existence here at the galactic level. When we get into the Thunderbolts project, Electric Universe, taking a look at how planets, the stars, the galaxies form along these current lines. The ancient myths talk about serpents in the sky, deities. They're a way of passing down the information of outside forces that do give our sun the power to keep life on this planet moving along. And the ancient myths, the ancient stories, are an attempt to keep the information alive regardless of what happens and what types of purges in society. And anytime you see a serpent, it does represent a Birkeland current, a galactic electrical highway. If we jump into Greek mythology, Zeus represents Orion, and Helios, the god of the sun. The serpents are the Birkeland currents, and when you look at this, it's nothing more than an encoding of outside star system powers our solar system. It's also known as Fohat. The Kundalini are nothing more than Birkeland currents. This knowledge was known many, many, many eons ago. Another depiction of how systems thousands of light years away affect our own world. Not only is this at the galactic scale, but it's at our body scale as well. This picture of the Assyrian tree of life was the clearest I could find. Representations from the stone relief are Kether, the winged disc, Orion, the flower is Tiphareth, the sun, and the two small circles at the bottom are Malkuth, the earth. The legends continue everywhere. The Mayan tree of life, again, the bird head represents Orion, sending the energy down through the cosmos to our earth. And Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the same stone relief ideas that the winged disc, Orion, the Kundalini, sending currents through space. Not only our solar system, but multiple solar systems are being powered by this nebula. The Chinese tree of life, again the same thing. The center top glowing orb is not the sun, it is an outside power source. This was the best representation I could find in the Kabbalah that had galactic significance to it. And when I started to do my own research after seeing what Danny Wilton had put together, so what I did is, following the Hermetic teachings, as above, so below, I took the card and reversed itself. Now notice the card on the top and the bottom give you two different patterns. On the bottom of the card, where Malkuth is, the earth, you'll notice the bulge pattern. And at the top where Kether, notice that there's a pinch pattern, a zeta pinch. That hourglass shape mimics exactly what comes out of the lab in plasma experiments. And as I was surfing through a few Egyptian hieroglyphs for water and electricity as just my search terms, I come out with Seth, the Egyptian god of chaos and infertility. As above, so below. This is a compilation of 8 of the exact same photo. I started with one and inverted it on itself, which gave sort of this 4-noted battery at the top, and then I just mirrored it on the bottom. And then I took that mirror set of 4 and then put it side by side. Now notice the patterns coming out of here. This is amazing. I was shocked when I saw this. And if you step back from your computer screen even 3 or 4 feet and look at it full screen, you'll get a different pattern view of it. But it's definitely showing what looks like pinch currents or bulge currents coming out. And if Seth is the destroyer, then this would make sense. We're on a, depending how the currents are flowing to our star would affect life on this planet. A bulge would allow more cosmic rays in, a decrease in our magnetosphere, and weather chaos. A pinch would create a more strengthened magnetic field, which would keep our Earth's crust in place and also create a more conducive environment for non-change on this planet. This is a picture of what appears to be the pinched current close up. This looks like what would be a bulge. Now notice the headdress also, it looks like two currents coming in and splitting off into either three, or the hidden one behind the headdress would be the fourth. So it's either coming in two splitting to four, or four splitting to two. Depends on how it's inverted or not. The visible is 2 to 3 or 3 to 2, but anyway, when that current switches, something on our planet and something in our star also changes, and this is what they were trying to encode in this ancient knowledge. We need to remember what's going on, because the new solar shutdown is happening right now, and it is all related. The ancients knew what the repercussions would be when these types of either pinches or bulges come along in our power source. What instantly drew me to Sobek was the headdress would look like two Birkeland currents coming down. What I did was inverted it and put it in on itself, single frame like this. This is the same exact picture, but I just inverted it and put it next to each other. Look what takes place in the center there. That looks like a plasma experiment straight out of a laboratory. And when I did invert the headdresses on each other, something really strange came out. It created new glyphs in the center. On the right, it looks like some sort of face with winged head disc coming off the top. And also on the left side, you'll see what appear to be numerals of 25 or 52, depending on how you turn this. In the very center, start to look more Mayan than it does Egyptian when you put these two together. Taking the wide view again, I just looped. This is 4 images on top of each other that are the same image, just either vertically, horizontal, and flipped on themselves. 2 nodes coming off. I'm no expert on plasma physics, and I hope somebody would take a look to see what this represents and what they instantly see. If you look at the Thunderbolts projects, they have a lot of different plasma discharges from zeta pinches. They all look exactly the same as this inverted thing here. I was really surprised when I started overlapping these and turning them around on themselves. And since Sobek controls the waters, I thought of Svensmark, the cloud mystery. Svensmark says that cosmic ray increases also lead to low cloud formation, which leads to cooling and many ice ages and full-blown ice ages. If Sobek is responsible for the waters, then that zeta pinch or the bulge coming off would be responsible for either increased or decreased cosmic rays on our planet, increasing or decreasing the amount of cloud cover. Really interesting how Egyptian mythology matches right into the newest cosmic ray research. And when we continue through antiquity here, this is a Hubble view of the Orion Nebula, and you can see where the all-seeing eye comes from. Now that all-seeing eye, those are currents, Birkeland currents coming off of there. Those are not sun rays. Those rays are powering that center disk, which is our sun. Now just think about that. If they had the ancient knowledge and knew that the Orion Nebula powered our star, they should have a galactic map of each and every one of those Birkeland currents going to another solar system in a different galaxy. How many galaxies is that nebula powering? We are not alone in this universe. And you don't need to go much further than Jacob's ladder to take a look at a center force with the rays. Again, these are just Birkeland currents. Every time you see this, you should know it's an outside power force coming in. Why would they have a third sun up there unless they understood where the origination points were? This is a 15th century depiction. An all-seeing eye in the center represented Orion powering our star. Now Danny Wilton colored it in so you can really see it well. Right in the center, all-seeing eye. The Sumerian creation myths with Anu and Namu. On the right side, if you consider Anu as Orion and Namu the controller of the Birkeland currents coming down to our star, you really think that 7,000 years ago they're going to draw little pieces of string on a creation myth? I don't think so. Those are Birkeland currents represented. And notice the trinity above. You have the moon, the sun, and then something is chipped off there. It's hard to see, but that looks like an external galaxy or sun system as well. Ishtar worship, Samash. This is antiquity old. We're talking again 6,000 years ago. Serpent represented Birkeland currents. Why are there 2 suns there? Well, one of them's not a sun. One of them is the Orion Nebula. When we talk about the awakening Kepler beetle pushing up the sun to the sky mother, Nut, those are not rays from the sun. That is Orion with more Birkeland currents coming down to our star. This is exactly what Birkeland currents look like in the Orion Nebula. There's multiple filaments coming off, each one of those connecting to a different star system powering something else. In versions of the Demiurge, you'd be burned at the stake by the Catholic Church if you purported something different than the Earth being the center of the universe. So, to disguise the information, God at the center is Orion. The arms and the fingers coming out are the Birkeland currents. Notice, powering as an external source into our sun. These are some great images from WISE telescope. This is the Flame Nebula. You can easily see the currents coming all over the place out of there. And as a single depiction here, again, you have to put Jesus in the center, powering as an external source. That is Orion. Those beams coming down are the force that keeps us alive on this planet and this place warm enough for us to grow food. This is Aboriginal art, originally from cliff drawings, rendered into modern day. You can easily see how the currents are coming off a central nebula, powering other stars. Now here's what's interesting. If the Birkeland current comes to our star, where does it go after? What star are we in turn powering from our Birkeland current further down the line? The Crab Nebula is one of the easiest for you to see. Look at the absolute raw power in the very center. You can see the cyclonic action with an actual beam coming out of there. That is a Birkeland current. That is a superhighway connecting to other star bodies. Look at the rest of the plasma filaments coming off and around the central blue area. Those are also leading off, connecting to other bodies in space, delivering electric current. The exact type of energy source that Nikola Tesla had tapped into and wanted our Earth to continue to use as free energy. Not really free, it was produced somewhere else, but we could use it for free. Another representation of God with Birkeland currents coming out of the fingers. God, of course, is Orion here. And you'll notice that it turns into the pyramid again, the all-seeing eye connected with this one. Seems to be a montage double there. Here's some more Birkeland currents coming off the Cocoon Nebula. This is really interesting. Like, where are those leading to? What do they power? And then in turn, what does it connect to? And that brings us back to this exact view again of the full, wide view of the universe. Do you get an idea now of how the power is going from star system to star system, galaxy to galaxy, solar system to solar system? We're included in this net. And when our current shuts down or diminishes, we go into a solar minimum or a full-blown ice age. And this is what the ancients were trying to encode, this information that the power is drifting, continually expanding, and it does fluctuate with repercussions for us on Earth. Celtic depictions as well, hard to ignore that. Easter Island, top bird head is Orion, the bottom round disk is our sun. And the Dogon, their solar trinity, showing different currents through space as well, connecting objects. They also have the pyramid and the all-seeing eye coming out of there. Their creation myths revolve around pneumo. It's very similar to the tree of life. And what are those tendrils coming off of there? Those are Birkeland currents. This is exactly what the depictions are talking about. A modern artist drew what they mean. Central source, the current coming back, and when you look into the Orion Nebula, you can actually see pneumo right in there at the bottom left along that large, long current of orangish yellow plasma filaments. And the Dogon were some really interesting people. I took a look at their ceremonial dress. I sat there for a while, and on that left side, I started to think, is that the singularity of a black hole that they're representing? And then when we get into cymatics and sine waves, that's all that's on their ceremonial dress are different sound wave patterns. Now, how did they know all these sound waves would take this type of form? You can't just tell me they randomly drew circles everywhere on their headdress. And one of the oldest surviving depictions of Birkeland currents in our skies connecting stars to outside power sources would be the Key of Solomon, a well-known pictogram in occult practices. Perhaps it's something else. That 10 o'clock position where the X comes through, that represents Orion. I believe the center star with those 4 circles around it would be our sun, focused in on the plasma filament coming in and powering that star. Also, going around in the different clockwise directions, they obviously knew that Orion powered different solar systems and different star systems. I think that's what the Key of Solomon is all about. This is a great view of Orion through the X-ray. Take a look at the very bottom right, how it looks like a serpent coming up, and you get the red eye right there. Like, how did ancients know all this, and how did they see this? And when we come back into the Nordic green man, above the head is that last shot I was telling you about. The snake he's holding is actually a Birkeland current, delivering it to our sun on the left, a circular object, looks like a bracelet. It's our sun. Those two circles on it match up with the Kabbalah tree of life at Malkuth at the bottom of the tree. And then under the deer, the Trinity matches up with the Dogon creation myths. And I found this combo of the Dogon Trinity and a Solar Trinity. This is the card. The north, south, east, and west. That is different from our current positions. Although when you're standing on Earth looking out at space, the southeast is where Orion is. And notice that Orion up there, the main energy source powering our sun and solar system. This is a picture of Birkeland currents coming into the sun in 1998. A little bit wider view. And I'll take you back 10 to 12,000 years ago, back to Göbekli Tepe. Serpents, those are Birkeland currents. Those are not demonic serpents. Those are Birkeland currents. This comes from the caves out of France, 17,000 BC, almost 20,000 years ago. Again, the same, all-seeing eye at the top, the half-winged disc, which we've seen in the nebula before, the power source coming down to the human brain, which is the tree of life, and then he's holding a pyramid. You know, there's a lot of connection here between ancient knowledge. The Egyptian creation myth, again, obvious references to Birkeland currents from Orion coming down, powering our star, or I should say many stars. This is what Birkeland currents look like in space. More rock drawings and cave paintings depicting the same central source with lines coming out, currents to other places, including our star. This is the Flame Nebula close up in the infrared. Look at that very center. You can see that line. It looks like a wavy line. It looks like a sine wave going through there. And when we get back into the winged dragons, that is the representation of Orion. Biting the tail is the green crocodile, Birkeland current. And notice how all four legs, the claws are poking into our sun. That's direct power into the sun. And then how did they know that the Orion Nebula was that color of red and then our Earth was green? The coloration even matches up correctly. Göbekli Tepe again. Orion, represented by the bird, is holding on to our sun. Direct connection. Let's come back to more modern satellite views of what Birkeland currents look like in and emanating from our sun. Notice that how it has that feathery kind of look to it, and then we look into some Mayan headdresses here, and they represent the exact same thing. This is during eclipse. You can easily see the currents coming out of there. Mayan headdress, Birkeland currents. This is during another eclipse. I like how they put the moon over there instead of having the round opaque disc. Look at the currents coming off of there. Boom, Mayan headdress. Solar magnetic filaments as well as the currents, both represented in this headdress. And you might think, well, yeah, Mayans have it, but the Buddhist philosophies and the Buddhist wheel of life also show Birkeland currents coming off some other. On the far left, Orion again. The river of life is a Birkeland current down to our system. This is a picture of a Birkeland current here, a real one. This is not a computer image. This is exactly what's going through space right now. And notice how you get that white line of current of energy coming out of Orion again on the left through the Buddhist philosophies. Now, one thing to take note of is, notice the mountains on the left. There's 3 mountains coming up, pyramids actually. All-seeing eye? Could be, but those things look like standing waves. So here I am looking at a picture of the wheel of life from the Buddhist philosophy, taken down from thousands of years ago, that show Birkeland currents and standing wave sound patterns in it, both encoded into this single piece of artwork. These are what sound waves do to beads. They hold the pattern. But for overlapping sine waves and square waves, what does that look like? Sort of something like this with the horns. It could represent, through antiquity, what we were told were bull horns, horns coming off of different deities. Are these the way they were trying to say sound waves? This is a square wave with 8 sine functions inside it. Very much looks like horns to me. And when we come down to the Egyptians, don't forget them. How would you encode this? That looks like a sound wave pattern, a triangle wave, coming right off of something that we can mimic today and actually see with our eyes. And when you start to put different multiple resonance frequencies on top of each other into infinity, you start to get into this, the infinite knot. Thanks for watching this longer video. I think the ancients were really trying to warn us and tell us to be careful of these currents, because when the current to our sun changes, life on our planet changes, and it seems that we are currently going into one of these changes right now. The cold weather that's all around the planet, they're breaking 150-year records of cold across the southeast United States. 1790 snow records in Boston. We're starting to now just dive right into the 200 to 300 year records being broken. And this is only the second year of the solar minimum. So when we get to the very bottom of the minimum coming up, I think it's going to be personally far, far deeper than the Maunder minimum. It's getting cold too quickly. I could see a year upon year where it was like 80 years, 100 years, 120 years, and then the next year broken would be 140 years, and then, somewhere around 2020 we'd break a 150-year cold record. But it's gone from 70-year snow records to 220-year snow records in a matter of 2 years. So what's next year? Be prepared.